Welcome to In the Room with Communitas North America. It's a time when we invite you to enter our world for a brief conversation and hear more about what we are passionate about as a missional and microchurch network. We also hope that these conversations will inspire you to think about new ways of being the church in North America. I am Leon Longard, the team lead for Communitas North America. My co-host in these conversations is James Kola. So grab yourself a favorite beverage, have a seat, and join us around the table.
Hey, welcome guys. We were messing with our format a little bit this week as we were thinking about the Church Beautiful as a topic. We just felt like we have an incredible resource as Communitas on this topic, and we really wanted to share it with you guys. So we're going to start with a little video on the Church Beautiful. Here you are.
Scripture describes the early church as an intimate, deeply connected community. As followers of Christ, they had life-transforming communion with God, whole-life community with each other, and life-giving mission. They changed lives. They changed neighborhoods, and they changed the world. How do we recover that vision? And what would it look like today? How do we, together, live like Jesus in our own neighborhoods? By becoming the Church Beautiful. A community that is both ancient and ongoing, a collective of everyday people following Jesus, striving together to bring hope to the world and one another. It's local and worldwide, inclusive and sacrificial, transformational and developing. It serves and leads in perpetual pursuit of the common good. This is what we were made for. This is the role that church was made to fill. What would the Church Beautiful look like in your community? The Spirit is already at work in your neighborhood, laying the groundwork for something amazing. So, ask yourself, could the Church Beautiful begin with me? Simply wanting this kind of community is not enough. We must act. We must join God in what He is already doing. God is moving, calling people just like you to innovate and create, to join Him on an adventure and show the world a new way of being church. There is no map for this journey, but for over 50 years, we have been walking alongside people just like you, all over the world. With passion and hard work, we can discover together what the Church Beautiful could look like in your neighborhood. Every journey starts with the first step. Let's go together.
Hey everybody, we are back after those technical difficulties. Sorry for all the echoes, and I think we've got it sorted out. I just felt this is too important of a topic to have all the technical difficulties going on and the echoing. I wanted to make sure everybody caught this stuff. So we'll probably repeat a few things when we get to the podcast. I'll do some very creative editing to get rid of some of the stuff, the problems. So we will get us back to the topic of the Church Beautiful, and we could have Mike Kuder and Bethany Labue here with us. And Mike, we asked this question before. James should be jumping in again. I told him to jump in. Maybe I sent it to the wrong email. He sent me a text. I'll get the link to him, but maybe just for starting, could you tell us again where the idea or how this language of the Church Beautiful became so important within Communitas? There was really a great story about you guys had about the experience of when we first encountered this language in a teaching years ago. So,
sure, it was in a teaching at a staff retreat some years ago, and Dr. Wes White gave a talk to us, and the topic was the Church Beautiful, and the key scripture text for that talk was in Ephesians chapter 3 and verse before and after verse 10. But verse 10 was his intent was that now, through the church, the manifold wisdom of God should be made known to the rulers and authorities in the heavenly realms, according to his eternal purpose, which he accomplished in Christ Jesus our Lord. And, as he unpacked this verse and the surrounding verses, played some Mahler symphony, went through the 4 dimensions of Hebraic thinking and all space-time continuum stuff. We were just pondering how God has chosen to use the church, the local church, and the eternal church of his, to make a dent in the universe. Like that the whole cosmos is affected by, and is the vehicle that God uses to show himself and his glory. And that it's an utterly transformative thing, again, not just in individual lives, but that the principalities and powers of the cosmos are affected by this thing that we call the church, and the way that she lives and demonstrates the attributes of God and lives in them. It was an incredibly powerful sermon or teaching, and it really was transformative to our organization, as Bethany had said. And I think it's worth repeating what Bethany said as well, because of not just the definition, but the context that it occurred in, and the results that came from it. Yeah.
Yeah, so at the time that Wes delivered this sermon, just before we had all been at a meeting in, I think, Portugal, if I recall correctly. And that was a really tough meeting for us leaders, because there was an excitement around the missional approach to church planting. We were reading Alan Hirsch and Hugh Halter and other great writers, and just getting really excited about what could this mean for the local church and for our mission organization. And some of the leaders who had been sold out on the high impact church model, the attractional church model, the international reaching to the national reaching model, felt discounted, felt forgotten, felt undervalued by our organization, because all of the focus was on the missional, this new approach. And some frustration and divide was occurring. And so Wes came a couple of months or a number of months later with this sermon. And I feel like the Holy Spirit really used it to heal us, that there are beauty and there are things to appreciate in every expression of church, every expression of church. And I think that the Muller, is that the name of the?
Mahler, yes.
Mahler. No, Mueller? Say it
Mahler.
again.
Mahler.
Oh, okay, Mahler. I just want to get it right. I want to get it right. I think that what was important about that piece, right, is that you need the flutes, and you need the violins, and you need the cello, and you need all of these instruments to create something that changes the cosmos. And that's the church.
Wow, I just love that description. And I think the timing of it, just how important that is, because there's so many things where people can feel alienated or feel like,
Yeah.
hey, everything's going this direction. I like this direction. I mean, we hear it all the time when you talk. People are like, well, my church is now doing this, and they're not. This just presents just a different image to what a lot of people feel like they're experiencing these days. And I think that is something that if we've lost it, we need to recapture it.
And be reminded of it.
Yeah.
So my husband and I had this really unique opportunity when we repatriated back to the United States of America a couple of years ago. And we found ourselves just looking for churches, looking for community, and we'd go and we'd park ourselves in one for a number of weeks or months even. And then we'd find, like, you know what, we can admire this, but I think we still need to keep searching. And so sure enough, I think we are 5 or 6 churches later, 2 years later, and we can literally church beautiful each one of them. This is what we appreciate. This is what we admire. If we run across someone that has this sort of need, or is this sort of worshiper, we can absolutely recommend these pieces. And so even now, we're practicing this ideal.
That's great.
So why has this idea? I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, but why has this idea of the church beautiful become so important within Communitas?
If I can answer first, Mike, I think because of the story I shared and how the Lord healed us and pulled us together, knit us back together as that beautiful orchestra, and we have not been the same since.
And I would say, I'm still experiencing audio problems, so I'm sorry. I can't hear you unless I have my headphones in, and then I get an immediate slap back. So
I know.
okay, sorry. The other reason I think that it's become really important to us is that it is a positive vision for the church, regardless of expression and form. In a time when there is incredible cynicism around church, where people seem, rightly so in many cases, to be very suspect and cynical about their church experiences. For example, in Europe, in places in Europe, you say, will you come to church with me? And the person in that culture says, oh, you mean that building over there? It literally is equated to a building. And the answer is no, I'm not doing that, for example. So just as an example of saying the church beautiful can and should be a positive, impactful thing, as opposed to all of the negativity and the downsides and the cynicism and the hurts and the complaining and the deconstructing. We really need to have a positive view and vision for what the church is, God's church is, before we can really move ahead in terms of church planting, or we ought to do that. Otherwise, it's very, I think it will be not nearly as fruitful, especially if you're working out of a negative view of church and trying to plant a church. There's some irony there. Leon, this as well as I do, as far as North America is concerned. A lot of people coming very frustrated with church and want to plant a church that's better than that other stuff, or I'll show them how to do church, and that's just wrong motivation. But the beauty of God and the gospel of Jesus Christ and what it means in the world and its ability and power to transform lives, that is something worth doing. And the collective community of followers of Jesus should track right along with that and display that again to the local community. But again, Paul says it makes a dent in the universe.
Right.
If
Go ahead, James.
it feels like there's a aspect of reflection and an aspect of looking forward in this idea. We reflect on what is beautiful about the imperfect expressions of church that exist, and also imagine the beautiful things that it can be, maybe it has been and lost. I just am appreciating both of those things as I hear you and Bethany talk.
Sure, absolutely.
Right.
And a lot of what we do in terms of training and what we kind of want to see happen as a result of dynamic adventure is reframing a lot of those things, rethinking and re-understanding things maybe that were hurtful in the past. For example, leadership. A lot of times there's difficult leadership, and we've had negative experiences with leadership. Well, we want to put forth a beautiful collaborative way of leadership, rather than something less than that. And all that is thinking about the past and the brokenness. And yes, the church is made up of broken people. We hear that every time someone falls, right? But in all of that, there is a positive vision for the future, and we may or may not be able to attain that as fallen creatures, but that's the idea. That's the goal. That's the intention.
Mm-hmm. As I'm thinking through it, and I'm thinking back to what Mike just said about how we have people who come to Communitas and are just like, they know what they're against.
Hmm.
As we've settled in here in Minnesota in this new community, we've kind of like Bethany and Steve, we kind of started to look around at different places. And, even as we're starting to initiate some of our own ministry and embedding here, we're still like, we like the traditional church gathering. Tina and I do, and we're like, well, we want to try to find. It'd be nice if we could find a place on Sunday mornings we could hang out with people. Um, and what we've kind of found one of those places where we tend to resonate a little bit more with them. And just recently, they were doing a series on what is your for,
Hmm.
and I'm like, that's what we need to be thinking about: is what are we for? And they talk about how we can all be all about what we're against, but what are we for? And I think the Church Beautiful just gives us this opportunity to present an image of what we are for, and what because so many people are looking at what they've seen in the church that makes them, kind of revolt against it, or kind of be repulsed by it. And it's like, no, no, no. There's something you can actually be for that's really cool and really beautiful and resonates here. So.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
We've talked a little bit about it, just come up that people have become a little bit disenchanted with a lot of the expressions of the church in the West and in the modern context. And with that, I wonder how the Church Beautiful potentially speaks to that demographic.
Yes. Well, I think, first of all, I think, again, we need, everyone has, not everyone, in my experience, so many people have deconstructed things. I'm hopeful that a good process of imagining the Church Beautiful in my neighborhood might be very helpful towards the reconstruction process.
Mm-hmm.
We do learn in our learning exercises. We do an online training. We've done this sort of virtual whiteboarding experience of the yes and game. Like, so the church is this, and each respondent says yes, and it's this. So the Church Beautiful is generous, and Bethany would say yes, and it's also full of grace, and James would say yes, it's full of grace, and it's blah blah blah, and it just goes around. We compiled a huge list of descriptors for the Church Beautiful, in our most recent training, and I think that gives us something to it concretizes some things that we can be aiming toward and thinking about, that we're called to. So again, I feel like the Church Beautiful is most helpful to help people reconstruct in a healthy way. And again, because it's just vital. It's vital, and done with a group. I was getting a little off topic, more into the training piece of it, but done with a group. If we sat around and 6 or 8 of us say, let's start a missional community in our home here, on the block, and we sat around and talked about what the Church Beautiful would be as this sort of inaugural set of people. I think it would really help us, shape what we're looking for and
Mm-hmm.
discern maybe better what are we being called to do and demonstrate, and so on. It feels collaborative. It also, it feels beautiful to do things that way rather than some of the other ways that are done that seem to be more authoritarian under the guise of the calling of a particular leader, for example.
Right.
And I really feel like the church. So I'm convinced of a couple things. I regardless of what Bethany said, and I agree with her, around our history, and we planted high impact churches, and an irony of ironies, we had one of our churches that has over 1,000 people attending on a Sunday, complaining that they weren't being paid attention to because these little, it was so much sexier and cooler to talk about the church of 8 people in the living room somewhere, right? I mean, that's just strangely disproportionate, right? But I still think, based on where our culture is, that the missional model for church and missional platform is still going to be a way that an awful lot of people are going to be reached with the gospel. Perhaps it'll be one of the more effective ways moving forward. We think that. And I think that this idea of the church beautiful and collaborative leadership around the church beautiful and really beginning to understand who we are brings an authenticity to that and a power that is really, it kind of goes hand in hand, if that makes sense, or meshes together really well. How we imagine ourselves, why are we doing this every week? Like, this is hard, but we're here to show God's glory and reflect the beauty of Jesus to the world in our own little piece of the world. It just seems like there's something that would be more enduring about that, if that's how you understand yourself, right? In the midst of the more difficult times of planting a church. That's
Yeah,
end
well,
of
well said.
Yeah, that is beautiful. That is great. Yeah.
We should write that down,
I think we should.
It's recorded.
Oh, there we go.
It's recorded now, so hey, we can
And it
probably
echoed, so it's 2 times.
Yes, exactly. Doubly as important. It sounds like God.
transcript it. We just have to transcript it. No, I think this is good because I think I love that and exercise you talked about, because I think so much, whether we call it the church beautiful or we call it anything. I mean, okay, so our family, we're trying to figure out what we represent in our community, and so I'm like, what are the values? And so it's like, we want to be this, and we want to be representing generosity and inclusiveness and good stewardship, and it's like, as you start to add all those things together, whether it's a household, house church, or a church, you just build a good image of what it is that our communities need to.
It's interesting. It's almost like a values exercise at the same time.
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And
great.
identity.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in that way, I feel like that can be really lend. I don't know how you'd say it, but it's internal authenticity to it, internal integrity, if you will, to the sum of the parts, right? Like why we're doing what we're doing, and we're sensing together, discerning together who God's called us to be, right?
Right.
Well, I would suggest that people come to Connect, because we'll be doing an exercise just like this.
Yes, I would be great. Hey, if you aren't signed up for Connect in North America Connect coming up next month, we are going to be doing this exercise. We're also going to be talking about stuff that around racial healing that talks about, part of being the church beautiful in the United States is healing of the races. And so, so yeah, we got our Connect plug-in. 20th to the 22nd. I'll put information in case anybody last minute wants to sign up. I'll put the link in. But
I might even add to the question that I just posed. We talked a little bit about a group that has been churched and become disenchanted with the church. How do you guys think that the qualities, this vision for the church beautiful, connect with people who never set foot in it or are unfamiliar with it?
I think that in the movie or in the film that we saw in the other live stream, it talks about this ancient and ongoing dynamic or piece or characteristic of Church Beautiful. And I think that when someone who maybe is unchurched or unfamiliar with the history, um, or even the positive history, because right, negativity is stickier, they can look back and see the the research that he even puts in this essay is how much hospitals and orphanages and people being fed around the world has come from the church and the generosity that's been ancient till present, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that it would help pose a wow, there really is an incredible history that um, they could learn and appreciate and feel confident in as they move into then what future expression are they wanting to be part of.
Mm. Mhm. I think it's winsome in many ways. I think of uh, some of my experiences with Serve the City type programs or things like that, being out and uh, again expressing generosity and hospitality and kindness and some form of love that you just met somebody on the street, however that went. And it's winsome. It's countercultural in many ways. People aren't prepared for it, especially in our current culture of sort of individualism and like every man and woman for themselves. Don't get in my way or I'll run you over. When when anyone, but particularly in my opinion, people of faith genuinely are out there serving and loving people, and that's a lot of the beauty, honestly, of that is how we express ourselves to the world. That uh, external expression of our internal values, right? I mean, we want to be generous, so we do this, right? Or we want to be kind and loving, so we do this stuff. And when the recipients of that receive that, I think it just the people are taken aback at times. Just even from and it just automatically sparks questions. And it's not to be manipulative at all. It's just people are incredibly curious about somebody who's willing to take the time to stop and talk to them, or if someone is disadvantaged in some way, to serve their needs when there's literally no reason to do so. Like 10 people can walk by and the 11th person stops. You're going to say, like, why are you doing this, man? Like, what? Thank you, but why? And it's almost provocative in that sense because it's so countercultural, this expression. And these are kingdom values, right? So there has to be some universality to it as well in terms of humanity, the generosity and the selflessness, as opposed to like Darwinism, like survival of the fittest. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's how I think it resonates,
Right.
and again, I think in some way there's an intrinsic authenticity to it, or there can be at least, and it feels real, right? And sparks those questions that uh, we can they come truly out of curiosity because it's so different what people are experiencing, and we have then the capacity to you know talk and convey and relate to people. I mean, that's what ultimately so much of what we do is about, is relationship, right? I mean, getting to know people and understanding them and their needs, and you know allowing the gospel, bringing the gospel to bear, if you will, in that situation, inviting people towards Christ. um, I just think there's an authenticity to all that when it's done properly and out of good motives that resonates.
I'm thinking as you mentioned this, I'm thinking back to the conversation we had 2 weeks ago with Kevin Johnson about his Holy Smokes cigar clubs that he does and things like that.
Mhm.
That he talked about how really a lot of it is based in just recognizing that helping people realize their belovedness
Mm.
in God's eyes,
Yeah.
capturing the Imago Dei. And I was just actually yesterday, I've been using um, Lectio 365, the app,
Hmm.
for some morning readings and stuff like that. And the Lectio yesterday was on justice, and the woman's daughter shared how her daughter just said, we just need to come to grips with our belovedness, because if we realize that we are beloved by God and that our neighbor is beloved by God, how can we not do justice, type of thing.
Mm.
And I'm like, yeah, that's it. I mean, that is a very key part of the Church Beautiful, that we're helping people to realize the belovedness. That, I love the imagery. You hear it a lot in particularly in civil rights communities, I think, because it comes from Martin Luther King long ago, where he talked about the beloved community, and that language has continued throughout the years, that we are all beloved
Mm.
in God's eyes, and we can invite people into that when we are the Church Beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. It's good, Leanne. I really like that.
Hmm.
Um, not to wrinkle too much, but earlier in the conversation, Mike, you said something about the Church Beautiful giving us like positive direction. What was the language?
Well, positive vision for the church
Positive.
is what. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just really appreciated that. I think when I think of like the outside perspective of the church, I think the church is often recently characterized by the things that it is against. And when we talk about the church beautiful, I think we start considering the ways that the church is contributing to the world around it. Man, how impactful is it when the church is contributing to medicine and food and art, and like a community that is offering those things to the world is going to draw the interest of the community that it is inside.
Hmm.
I just was appreciating that.
And hopefully more than the attention, hopefully it's going to draw their participation. Hopefully it's going to draw, yeah, invite them to participate. Absolutely, like, and they're going to want to. Not everyone, of course, but absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and the hope is that they then see God more clearly
Yes.
and experience that Church Beautiful, that they are the Church Beautiful
Mm-hmm.
And beloved.
and
And
beloved.
beloved.
Do we have to write this whole thing over now? Or is it just going to be the church beloved?
No, we'll keep the Church
No, but there's so much.
Beautiful.
There's so much to that. Helping people to recognize their own imago Dei and their belovedness. Yeah, I mean, isn't that what so much of the alienation is of the individual in our society is? You're a number. All right. I mean, you're a nameless, faceless person or thing that's in my way. When you're driving down the highway,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
you know your social security number, or everything can be so impersonal, especially in
Right.
more of a tech world that's more expansive, and to really help reveal to a person how much they are loved by God by this demonstration of this beauty, whatever it might be. Again, we come to the kindnesses and the generosities and those kinds of, there's a whole list of attributes, that we could put together. I don't want to focus on any one particular one, but all of those serve to help a person recognize that, yeah, ultimately God so loved the world and everyone in it, right? That's just really key. We really need to hold on to that tightly.
Mike, Bethany, this was a wonderful conversation.
Hey, you had a great question earlier about Acts.
Okay.
James?
We think we have time for that?
Oh, we got plenty of time. Yeah, we're doing good.
Sweet. Okay.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
All right.
I think here's somebody calling me. You guys are up to something.
I was just wanting to maybe talk a little bit about how you guys see this concept of Church Beautiful demonstrated first by Jesus and his followers, and then in Acts.
I think it's a good coaching question. Like Bethany, we should turn it around and say, well, how would you see that, James?
The first thing that came to my mind, are you going to answer, James?
No, I said.
Nice.
No, the first thing that came to my mind was The Chosen, I think, demonstrates so beautifully Jesus and the calling of his disciples and changing things up and accepting and loving the expression that each of them bring into the community. So it's like a micro looking at Church Beautiful with these particular personalities and people. And I love when he uses the Sermon of the Mount and he states all the Beatitudes and specifically pulls out the stories of these particular individuals, which we could all, right, identify with at least one of those disciples and hear Jesus expressing beauty in their blessedness. So I think that's what came to my mind when you asked that question first, of just, wow, we have this beautiful visual in the Chosen TV show that where they see it and express Jesus's use of this.
I would agree. I mean, I think the demonstration of the kingdom is clear in the Gospels. Jesus' demonstration of it, his announcement of it, his kind of living it out, right? Through what he does and the values and the ways in which he does it, I think are all proto Church Beautiful things, if you will. Like, there wasn't a church per se then, but I mean, and at the bottom line of it all is, I mean, he had his missional community, and that was part of a larger thing, right? And
CCM was happening, Mike.
exactly, CCM was happening: community, communion, and mission. For those of you who don't know, and I mean, it was just in situ learning, in situ discipleship, right? I mean, just kind of roaming the countryside with some intention, at least in Jesus' mind, for sure. But it was learning along the way and reacting and responding authentically to all these different people that he met along the way. Some somewhat sternly, I think, lovingly, because some of them were kind of missing the point, and he was trying to redirect them into the proper place. But others with incredible compassion. Like, okay, stop. We got to go here instead. Like, this person needs us. Like, and that's all discipleship. It's all Jesus living out the characteristics of God right in front of us, right? And that surely was impactful, right? I love, so The Chosen is not the Gospels. It's an enactment of them, and I really love how it humanizes that stuff, though, I will say, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
It's a really great dimension to that. The human element just feels very real, like, at least to our eyes and ears.
Yeah.
Bethany, I love how you talked about Jesus honoring the humanity of this diverse group of people. It's fun that, like, showing people their value or their belovedness has become so much a part of this conversation. I've enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I think because you guys have been talking about the Gospels now, but when you think in even the book of Acts, in Antioch they were called Christians because they were like Christ. It's like they saw this continuation of this ministry happening And I just even think of the picture in Acts 2 of the early church where they had all things together in common.
Mm-hmm.
And it says in there, they grew in favor with God and man
Mm-hmm.
as they continued to live this kingdom lifestyle that Jesus had modeled for them right there in Jerusalem. So,
Yep.
I mean, and again, that's what we got to. That's what we hope to recapture with the Church Beautiful concept.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, this has been a great conversation. And like I said, I think I said to Bethany before we came back on, I'm like, yeah, we had all the technical difficulties because I think we knew it was an important conversation. It's like we have to have this conversation. And it does set us up for the next few weeks because 2 weeks from now, we are going to have Russ Davis from New Community Church, um, one of the atypical Communitas North America communities. It has a building. It's less micro church. It's a little bit more like a traditional church. But there are some amazing, beautiful things that they're doing there. We're going to talk about how they are expressing the Church Beautiful in Spokane, and we've
Cool.
got a couple of other ones we're planning for the 2 shows after that, hoping to see some practical examples of the Church Beautiful in the next few episodes. So thanks, guys, for joining us. Thank you to those who did. I saw a couple of viewers here. You have the link there in the notes, in the comments for the Communitas North America Connect if you want to come join us to have more conversation about the Church Beautiful. Otherwise, also remember if you have any questions about things we've been talking about on any of these episodes, we're going to try to do a question and response episode sometime in January or February. Send your questions to leon.longard@gocommunitas.org. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.